it is much worse psychologically to feel worthless than to feel exploited. So given what's happening in the world right now with things being automated, going to AI, what are 3 things, let's say, that people can do to make sure that they're poised to thrive in this time of massive change?
First of all, I mean, that's what everybody's saying, but it's true, is that you have to embrace change. That the idea that you can learn something in your youth, a profession, a way of life, and it will just be there for the rest of your life, which was the situation for most of history. This is no longer the case. We have to keep learning and keep changing throughout our lives. Otherwise, we will be left behind. So that's one key principle. Related to that is that maybe the most important quality to survive and flourish in the 21st century is to have mental flexibility. Not just to keep learning and changing again and again, also to keep letting go. Part of what makes it difficult to learn new things that we hold on. Like, I spent so many years learning something, and now the world has changed. And I just don't want to let go. And letting go, maybe I'll give an example of how deep it goes. Like, it's not just what you learned in college or what you learned in kindergarten. It's even what you learned as a baby, as a toddler, like learning how to see or learning how to walk. And what does that mean, that I have to relearn how to see and walk? Well, as virtual reality improves, and with all the talk of the metaverse and so forth that we'll discuss later on, increasingly, it's likely that there will be many more activities shifting from the physical, biological world that we know into a new reality, a virtual reality, which has different physical and biological laws. Even the laws of physics there are different. So whether you want to interact socially there, or maybe you have a job in virtual reality, in the metaverse, or maybe you design, you have a new job designing fashion, designing shirts for virtual reality because people want to look good there. You need to forget how physics and light and gravity works here, because it works in a different way in that reality. So just, what does it mean? Like, I'm now 46. Let's say I have a new job designing fashion for the metaverse. How can I, at age 46, kind of forget what it means to see and learn from scratch how to see things?
Are you optimistic that adults can do that?
Humans have an amazing ability to adapt and to change. It's often said that AI is nowhere near its full capabilities, but human beings too are nowhere near their full capabilities. We really have no idea what we can still do, what our mind can still do. If you think about jobs again, so the biggest change in the job market of the 20th century, looking at the previous century, it didn't come from any technological invention. It actually came from unlocking the potential of half the human species. Women, which were barred from so many jobs because people thought they were incapable of doing that, and they didn't have the education and training and so forth. And the feminist revolution and the changes in gender relations just completely changed the job market. And you didn't need to genetically engineer women's DNA or to kind of connect them to some new device. No, the potential to be presidents, to be judges, to be journalists, to be scientists was always there, but it wasn't tapped. And it's to a large extent, I hope we'll see something similar in the 21st century, that yes, we have all these new challenges, but we also have this amazing untapped potential within us. But this links to the third thing, which is we can't do it alone. Like placing
Humans
all
can't do it alone, or individuals can't do it alone?
individuals can't do it alone. Like placing all the responsibility on individuals. The world is changing. Now it's your job to adapt, to change yourself, to learn. It doesn't work like that. It's too much for an individual to do just by themselves. Will probably will require organizations, governments to step in to make sure that people are not left behind. Just retraining people. You lose your old job to a computer or a robot or a self-driving vehicle. There are new jobs. I don't think there'll be a problem of just an absolute lack of jobs. All jobs disappear, but new jobs emerge. The really difficult thing will be the transition. And the transition, first of all, you need some kind of financial assistance. Like you lost your old job, you need to retrain for a couple of months for a new profession maybe, who is going to support you during this time. So just as in the 20th century, governments built this huge infrastructure for educating the young, schools and colleges and so forth, will now need to build another infrastructure to educate and to retrain people in the 40s and 50s.
Do you see that as...
One last thing is that they'll also need psychological help.
That's what I was
Again, because it's going to be extremely stressful. To kind of invent yourself when you're 16, this is what you do when you're 16. But when you're 46, you want to take it easy. I don't want to start all over again. So it's psychologically very, very stressful. And I think that we will have to see more government support for mental health, just to cope with the immense stress of the 21st century.
Do you know the learn to code meme?
The?
Learn to code.
Oh, learn
meme.
to code.
So people are getting booted off of social media for saying it. It's one of those things that took me so by surprise. So anybody, I think, that spends enough time contemplating, okay, AI, what's the future? I'm sure we'll get into data harvesting and stuff like that. You really do begin to understand that the future belongs to the technically savvy.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are a 46-year-old truck driver, sort of the classic example, because that's, going the way of the dodo, and it's, not something that requires a high degree of education or necessarily even a ultra high IQ. Not saying that drivers don't have a high IQs, I'm just saying it doesn't necessarily max your IQ to do that job. And so when people say, okay, if the future belongs to the technically savvy, we know drivers are going to, be without that job, then they should learn to code to get a new job. And my instinct was, yes, that's absolutely true. And I came to that debate super late. And so by the time I got there, people were already getting banned off social media for saying it. And I was like, wait, what? So going back, I couldn't understand why telling the individual that you're going to be a participant in this. I'm not opposed to, I think it's a great idea for governments to create a safety net. I think it's a bad idea for governments to drag you across the finish line. And I think that ends in tyranny every time. So where do you see, because it will be hard and there will be people left behind, I don't see any way around that. And nature, so curious to see if you agree with this, nature does not care. Nature will leave you behind in a heartbeat. Mother Nature is more than happy to obliterate people, watch an entire generation get eaten by a change, doesn't care. Mm-hmm. So how do we, without incapacitating the people that have to relearn and do this very difficult thing, how do we encourage them to move forward without either abandoning them on one side or dragging them forward on the other?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I have to say that I'm not sure that coding is such a safe job, because coding too could be automated. Maybe, you could also, we'll also need a lot of therapists. We'll need community organizers. We'll even need philosophers, because a lot of these new questions, they actually, suddenly the big tech companies need people who understand deep philosophical questions because they become technical questions. You need a lot of people in the taking care of other people. It's, in a way, it's easier to automate the job of a coder than the job of a nurse. Like coding is, in the end, it's just data, it's just information coming in and out. So I can see more easily how you automate the job of a computer scientist, or at least some of these jobs, than the job of a nurse who needs to replace a bandage or to give an injection to a screaming child and things like that, partly because it demands a much wider range of abilities. It's not just, of course, a nurse needs to understand information and to analyze information and so forth, but also needs motor skills, also needs social skills. And the combination of these skills, this is much harder to automate. So I wouldn't place all my bets on something like coding. Governments are essential, again, partly because in many countries, I think about, you mentioned truck drivers, also textile workers. You think about many countries in Latin America, that they don't have a high-tech sector, they have a textile industry. Lots and lots of people working in textile, producing shirts. And suddenly, all of this is automated. It's cheaper to produce shirts in California than in Mexico or in Guatemala. And in addition to that, there is an entirely new line of textile industry, which is virtual shirts. Like I spend hours in virtual reality, I want to look good, the latest fashion in virtual reality. And somebody needs to design it. Now, how do you take, again, a 40-year-old unemployed textile worker from Guatemala and turn her or him into a designer of virtual shirts? So without government support, and in this case, these countries could, even they can't afford it. They will have to get support from the richer countries. Otherwise, we are facing a global catastrophe. So I'm not saying that governments kind of will force people to do something. It's, like with basic education for young people. You can still fail, you can still drop out, but at least you are given the chance. And then whether you use this chance that you're given wisely or not is up to you. But I think most of the successful systems in history, they are complex. They don't place all the responsibility just on individuals, because then a lot of people are left behind, not because of even their fault. It's just they weren't given the proper opportunity. On the other hand, trusting only government, then you get these kind of communist nightmares that we definitely don't want to try this mistake again.
If you like that clip, check out another powerful clip right here, and I'll see you there.